Hi, I'm Mirka, and I'm a picture book author and an illustrator. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about if you are just wanting to get into picture books, what you should consider putting into your portfolio. And I'll give you kind of 10 points to think about, and think of these 10 points as being like a Venn diagram. The 10 points don't have to be individual illustrations, but you can combine different points into similar illustrations. And so point number 1 is include illustrations with kids in them. And so have kids running around, jumping, doing all the fun kid things that they do. If you like doing people, then I recommend that you can add other ages of people in your portfolio as well. So have some adults, maybe some teenagers, some older people, and then that way you have a nice variety, but it's nice to have most of the characters in your illustrations be kids of the age that you want to illustrate to. My point number 2 kind of verges on point number 1 is your portfolio should show things that you like to illustrate. And so if you don't like to illustrate cities or cars or machinery, then don't include a whole bunch of that in your portfolio. Personally, for me, I really like animals and nature, so almost all the pieces in my portfolio have some kind of a nature scene. Almost all of them have animals. Not very many of them have people. I have some, but almost all of them feature animals of some kind. So illustrate what you want to do books about, because the worst thing that could happen is an editor or an art director sees your piece where you drew a truck or something like that, and then they contact you to do a whole book that is all about trucks and cars or something like that, and then you're stuck illustrating something that you don't care to illustrate. And point number 3 is include illustrations with some common animals in them. And so this might be pets, cats and dogs, maybe bunny rabbits or hamsters. They could be forest animals like bears and foxes. They could be jungle or farm animals, just animals that you see in picture books a lot. And having some examples of those is great to have in your portfolio. Point number 4, you want to include different formats of illustrations in your portfolio. So if you think about opening up a book and there might be one illustration that's horizontal and that goes a full spread, so you want to include some horizontal illustrations with backgrounds in your portfolio, and then some of your book illustrations might just be one page and they might be vertical, so you want to include some vertical illustrations in your portfolio, and then also just some spot illustrations or vignettes where you have a little bit of background or no background at all and you just see the character. And so including a variety of different kinds of illustrations is really beneficial to show that you can do all those different kinds of illustrations in your portfolio. Then point number 5 is try to include scenery that happens in different locations. So you can include scenes that show interior scenes like in a kitchen or in a living room, and that way you can showcase how you would design an illustration like that, and then also include scenes that happen outside. They can be in the city or in a forest, and that way you're showing a range of different illustrations that you can do. Point number 6 is show the same character in multiple illustrations. And so this will be kind of a series of illustrations, and you'll have the same character in at least 3 different illustrations, and that shows that you can draw a character consistently, and you want to have the character in a different pose in each one. Make sure they're somehow active. So maybe one is showing them from straight on, maybe in one of them they're climbing over and you're showing them from the side, and then maybe another one is a close-up of them or something like that. And then also make sure that your character is showing different emotions, and then that way you're really showcasing that you can have a character and draw it consistently, moving and having different emotions in at least 3 different illustrations. And that just showcases that you can complete a full book and have your character be consistent throughout the whole thing, and have your world building, have all your backgrounds look similar in all the illustrations. Then for point number 7 is show different emotions, and I touched on this a little bit earlier. Make sure you are showing different emotions, so not every character in every illustration that you have in your portfolio should be happy. You should show characters that are sad, that are upset, or you can have, two different characters in the illustration and one is sad and one is happy. And then that's immediately telling some kind of a story. And so just make sure that you're showing a range of emotions in your portfolio. And then alongside that, for point number 8, is show a lot of movement in your illustrations. And so you don't want to just show your characters with their arms hanging limply on their sides, standing still. You want to show them running, jumping, with, excited. And think about how their emotions can be shown through their bodies. And so if somebody's running, are they running excitedly? Are they running angrily? Are they running afraid? How are they moving, and how are the emotions being shown in your characters through their bodies? And so again, show a lot of different movements and emotions in your portfolio. And then point number 9 is showing off your storytelling capabilities. So for example, when you're working on that series of 3 illustrations with the same character, what kind of a story can you tell between those 3 illustrations? But then also think about what kind of stories can your individual illustrations tell. And so a lot of that movement and emotion will come into play in that. So if you have a character that looks like they're upset, and let's say they're in the living room and maybe, it looks like they just fell off the side of the couch or something like that. And then think about what other elements you can put in that illustration to really push that storytelling. Could it be a different, like what time of the day is it? What other kind of props does your character have? Are they in are their clothes dirty? Is their knee scuffed? Is their outfit doesn't match what they look, let's say, I don't know if it's a girl climbing in a tree, but then they're wearing, a ball gown or a tutu or something like that, adding those kinds of elements into your illustration will help with the storytelling, and it'll create this whole, you can create a whole story with just one illustration when you pay attention to the emotions and the props and the movement and all those things, and create really dynamite single illustrations. And point number 10 is less is more. And so as you are working on creating new illustrations and adding them into your portfolio, always go through your portfolio and make sure you're cutting out weaker pieces, because your portfolio is only as good as the best piece in it. And so it's helpful to be in a critique group and get feedback from peers, or you can get a critique from a professional illustrator or from art directors or agents through SCBWI events. And like I do critiques, or if you're in any kind of a community or a Kidlit 411, you could ask, there's an illustrator group over there that you can ask feedback for. And sometimes it's helpful for other people to look at your work and let you know which pieces are the weakest ones. But it's good to develop that eye for yourself too. And if you can put a critique group together for yourself, then when you critique other people's works, you start noticing different things in your own work, and then it becomes easier to figure out which pieces are stronger and which pieces are weaker. And then I would also recommend you to take your own illustrations and then pick out books that you find from the library or from the bookstore and place your illustrations, kind of put them alongside each other and see how your illustration compares with other illustrations that are being published right now, with illustrators' work who are being published right now, who you look up to, and see if your illustrations kind of match up to the quality of those illustrators. And if your work is not quite up to par with them, then spend some time and kind of figure out what is working in those professional illustrators' pieces that might not be working in yours. Is it, maybe the color scheme isn't quite right, or it's not quite, harmonious, or, maybe it's that the illustrator that's been published, maybe they have really great emotions, or maybe they have really great movement for the character, or, try to figure out where your work is lacking compared to the other illustrators' work, and then see if you can emulate people who are kind of ahead of you and use some of the techniques that they are using in your own portfolio to kind of lift your work up to the level that professional illustrators are doing. And as said, all the things that I kind of mentioned, it's like a Venn diagram. So not every illustration has to have every single point that I just talked about. But if your portfolio, let's say it has 10 illustrations in it, try to pick a little one from each one of those points that I do and try to include bits and pieces of those elements in each illustration to make it really good. And hopefully that's helpful. I welcome any comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.